How did a casual drinking club of 9 ambitious young cooks turn into a legit chef's collaborative tackling the betterment of Colorado Springs' food scene 20 years ago? We talked to 3 of them left standing about what they did and didn't accomplish next. This is State of Plate, where we dish on Colorado Springs culinary culture. Thanks to State of Plate's underwriters, the Colorado Springs Community Cultural Collective, Downtown Colorado Springs, and the Fountain Creek Brewshed Alliance. All right, this is episode 2 of State of Plate. My name is Matthew Schnipper. I am the Colorado Springs Independent's food and drink editor, and I'm also a food critic there. Today, my guests are Brent Beavers, Gust, and James Africano. Brent is the owner of Immerse Cuisine and BFD, which stands for Breakfast for Dinner. It's not what you think it stands for. It's a big fucking deal, right? That's what other people say.
Yes, it was a big fucking deal.
Oh, so it does stand for that. Okay, I stand corrected.
Yeah,
it's
and
actually...
the BFG stands for Best Fucking Gravy.
Oh, okay.
But some people are a little uptight, so we don't talk about that.
Right, which is why I went with Breakfast for Dinner, the sanitized version for this.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
Family friendly.
James, you're at the warehouse, and Jay, you're the owner of Homa, Tapateria, and Pizzeria Rustica. I'm going to go around the room real quick and have you each tell me a little more about where you're coming from. Let's start with you, Brent.
I kind of grew up here. I was a dishwasher at the Mason Jar, and on the last episode you had Shane. I was a dishwasher for his father at the Painted Lady. When I was 16, he was the first one to teach me what are really simple, important things. He's like, hey, salads go on cold plates, which you would think makes sense, but actually that's something that people need to be taught. After that, I went to the Mason Jar, washed dishes. Got a job working at La Petite Maison with Jeff Mervis, and that's where I began my real education with food, understanding sauces and understanding flavors. I was plucked from there to open a restaurant called Sencha. I ran that for about 7 years, and then I went off and did some corporate stuff, kind of came back, and a few years later, we're at the Carter Payne with 2 restaurants in there. So it's kind of rocking and rolling.
Nice. It's a BFD.
It is
the
a
other
BFD.
version of BFD.
Yes.
Okay. All right, James, you are up next, sir.
I grew up actually in Arizona and New Mexico and moved here in high school, Colorado Springs. Took my first job at the Embassy Suites Hotel on the north side of town, washing dishes. Same kind of come up as just about everybody we're going to talk to today, except for Snooty Pants next door here, Gust. But actually, he's got a pretty good story too, minus the school. Did some time there washing dishes, moved to Hawaii, and I guess saw culinary arts become something that could be a career as opposed to what I did for a little while. There's a different reverence for the profession there. Walking through some of the service hallways and having people look at you in your chef whites and oh, you're a cook, or you work in one of the kitchens, changed my mindset pretty completely from this is what I'm doing right now to this is what I think I want to do, because I loved it. I just could never see a career come out of it. Moved back to Colorado Springs, popped around a little bit, worked at Phantom Canyon for a while. I know that's a part of at least your history, right. Brent?
Yep.
Got some pretty good chops there on doing big time volume. Moved around a little bit, landed at the warehouse when I was 23 years old, and was the chef there for about a decade, left and went to New Mexico, worked for Ted Turner for a little while at a really giant ranch, one of the best experiences of my life. Really enjoyed it. Also, really helped to finish forming a style that I might have been starting to put together at the warehouse, and then came back and actually bought the warehouse 7.5 years ago now. I've survived COVID as a business and as a person maybe more than twice, and now we're here and rocking and rolling.
Jay Gust, you're up.
Okay, so moved out here in 95 at 19 years old and started dishwashing at the Ritz and ended up running it for about 13 years. They sent me off to culinary school, which ended up doing my internship at a vineyard, fall in love with oenology and viniculture. And then when I came back, started still working with concept restaurants, helping with Mackenzie's, and of course taking over the Ritz. And then jumped into the corporate world for a hot second, task force chef, EC for Hilton Group and Doubletree, and then decided to stop doing corporate work and buy a bunch of restaurants. Pizzeria Rustica, Tapateria, then we opened up our Enoteca Rustica. And then had a short stint where I thought I could pull off Scandinavian food. And then now I'm kind of Well, just as of recent, the last project was a really cool boutique hotel project called Kinship Landing, and they didn't know F&B, and that was my forte. So we helped build a really cool, progressive F&B program for Kinship Landing called Home at Kinship Landing.
Nice.
Yeah, awesome spot, man. I love it.
For any listener who may not have been to one of your restaurants because they are new to town or they're just not cool people, but we're going to try to make them cool people.
Good luck.
Yeah, okay. Why don't you run down, like, what do you serve? What do you do?
We're a multi-concept space. We're in the old Carter Chapel. It's a 125-year-old church. It was started with Local Relic, which is a small batch brewery, 230 beers a year, like one barrel. So if you like it, you got to come back and drink it because otherwise it'll be gone. We never repeat recipes there. I was the second concept to come into the partnership. They needed food. Jeff, my partner, got me pretty drunk one night. And then I've been there doing food for 5 years now. So we've got a cocktail bar concept in there called Aracana, and we've got a wine bar in there as well. So now we function as one entity with multiple concepts.
So BFD is breakfast for dinner. It is brunch food weekends.
Yep. Immerse is started as kind of snack food and tacos. We've kind of moved away from that. We want to be good, intentional food, but drop all the pretense. Just tasty stuff. We make a lot of our own curries. We are doing a bunch of ferments. We're making our own vinegars. We like to play around with our food, so the menu can kind of get a little all over the place, but it's all pretty solid stuff.
Sweet. James, tell us about the warehouse menu right now.
The warehouse was actually originally born with Palmer Lake Brewing Company, so it started to kind of be in the genre of Phantom Canyon, which was kind of a comfortable place to go at the time.
Which is like early 90s, right? We're talking like 93,
yeah,
94.
we'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
The early 90s.
Well,
was part of them.
Phantom opened in 93 with Bristol, right? They were the first two breweries in town, I think.
Yeah. Palmer Lake opened in Palmer Lake and then was moved down here in the late 90s. The warehouse opened. And it never really worked in that for whatever reason. It was too far south. It wasn't in the middle of everything just yet. And the volume couldn't do it. And so over time, and with a little bit of prodding from me of the original owner, we got it to be a little bit of a nicer, kind of higher end restaurant. Certainly not fine dining. That doesn't really exist much in Colorado Springs even today. But high end dining, at a different level, a different price point. A little more care put into the food, a little bit more. The ingredients changed. Where we were sourcing ingredients changed. And that has all come and gone again and come back and gone. And Warehouse has been through some things over the years. So higher end dining, it's not the least expensive restaurant in town by any means, but you have a quality experience while you're there. And like Brent said, and I think this is important without the pretense, we try to make it pretty friendly. And you shouldn't feel uncomfortable in a tank top and shorts, a shirt and a dress. It doesn't matter. We just, we're happy to have you. And we have a lot of very comfortable American fare: roasted chicken, a steak and potatoes with creamed spinach and leeks, classic steakhouse stuff, a burger. But then we also have a lot of wild game incorporated. That was something that we were doing a lot in the late 90s and early 2000s in the original kind of restaurant revolution of Colorado Springs. That Colorado cuisine, you don't hear it said much anymore, but I think we've managed to hold on to it pretty well. A lot of those places have gone away in town, and it's kind of sad. But you will find elk, boar, quail, lamb, venison, antelope on our menu at any given time to kind of push your palate a little bit, change the dining experience. We have bison tongue pastrami right now. If you want to come check it out, it's delicious.
I like it.
Yeah, I've actually tried the dish. That's really good.
Yeah, it's a great dish.
The warehouse is our go-to for our anniversary. Not only do we have our wedding reception there, but we go there every year. James does an amazing job coursing us out. Even our 2-year-old, 3-year-old kid now, he gets his own little cute courses. And he's an eater. Luckily, he's an eater.
I love feeding Joel.
He just smacks it down, and he doesn't leave a huge mess.
No.
Always a plus.
Always a plus. Not like, I'm going to just grab all the crackers, smash them now, throw them over the floor, and now we got that out of the way.
No.
Now we can have dinner. He
eats the meat and then chews on the bone. He's awesome. I love that kid.
It's super cool.
So Jay, tell us, I know you've got 3 to cover, so you want to hit quick styles?
Okay, Pizzeria Rustica, VPN Pizzeria. So Naples
What's
style.
VPN? Help me. I know, but somebody else might not.
Okay, so it's a classic Naples style pizza. So we fly in our yeast from Ischia. We use the Caputo. We do everything as classic as possible. I would say it's like the upscale pizzeria of Colorado Springs. High-end wines, all the goodies. Tapateria, gluten-free Spanish tapas. wine bar, fun, cool, fast-paced, funny-burning nitro car all summer long. And then home at Kinship Landing would be, one of our clients probably put it best. He says, the food here gives me optimism. So healthy bowls, great sandwiches, locally baked bread, all the concepts. We try to source regional first and then local second. So whether it's Italian, Spanish, and or health conscious, starts there and works its way to how do we backfill with everything local as it's available.
Cool. I want to do one more transparency note, but last episode I mentioned our guest was Shane Lyons. He and I worked together at Sencha. That today is the Sencha, the same Sencha we're talking about with Brent Beavers in the room. So Brent was my chef at Sencha. Brent, what do you want to say about our Sencha years?
Thanks for putting up with my shenanigans. I was kind of a dick back then. Maybe still, but definitely then. We had a great time. You were an excellent waiter. You were always passionate about food. You took place in our literary dinners, which were kind of this crazy idea that we had, and I've seen you with less clothes on than most of my waiters.
It was just the Odyssey, guys. It's not what you think it is.
Right.
Right.
Tips were good.
Tips were really good that night.
Really good that night. Best tips ever.
I need to reprise my role as Odysseus sometime.
Yeah, we should do that.
Back then, though, Sencha was one of those places in town, one of the few, like the warehouse of its day. I mean, you guys would have cigarettes after work on Sencha's patio. I'd be, finishing up like side work and stuff and come out and find you guys. Those were not cigarettes, actually. You're correct.
I don't know. They were for me.
They were small.
They
were small cigarettes. I don't know. Yeah. But at that time, it was better than. And the specials that were coming off your line on a given Friday and Saturday were phenomenal, I think. And we were all really proud to work there. And you, Jamal Davis, we had just like a really tight, talented crew back there. It was a small kitchen, though. It wasn't a big crew.
Yeah, small space.
Yeah.
But small spaces create great stuff. You have to be tight. You have to pay attention to your details.
Last episode, we opened it really up big about analyzing the state of Colorado Springs food scene now. We asked some core questions, which we're going to revisit in every episode about where are we now? Where do we want to go? What are we doing right and wrong? And how do we advance our scene? At one point, Shane mentioned there was this group of fine dining chefs around 20 years ago. Well, that's you guys. You were in this group. It's called Club 9. It's a chef's collaborative. How did it come together, and what was its mission?
Back in the day, this would have been like probably 2000, 2001.
Yeah, in that area.
Right around there. There was a chef in town. His name was Victor Matthews, and he was very verbose in the media, and decided to call some of us as chefs in to work together. And one of the premises was always that as good chefs, if you work together, you actually lift people up. The competition is not a bad thing. Competition can be a very healthy thing as it's done in a supportive environment. So he started this club, and I was one of the original members. James, the other original members were Chris Adrian, Chris Bowie,
Chip Johnson,
me and you,
Marcus, and I don't know Marcus's last name.
Where was Marcus working at the time?
Walters.
Over on 8th Street. John Broning.
Yeah.
And he was at
He was at Primitivo.
Okay.
Yep, and there were originally 9, and I think we just got there. I don't know.
Eric Viet.
Eric Viet was an add-on along with Jay Gust a little bit later. It was probably a year, and we had some fallout. Some people came and went.
They're starting to age out, so like, we need to get some young guys.
Yeah, and
That's right. So we brought you in, young buck.
Yeah, a whole 18 months younger than the rest of us. But anyway, yeah, so that's how it kind of came about. And then for a long time, it was honestly really just a drinking club. We got together once a quarter at somebody's restaurant and drank until 3 a.m. We didn't say that out loud. We don't drink after 2 o'clock in the morning at the restaurants.
Did you cover
I've never drinking after 2 o'clock in any restaurant I've had.
It's not in a restaurant if it's in the walk-in.
That's true.
Boom. It becomes a private space after you lock the doors. But it basically became a drinking club for the better part of 3 or 4 years.
But did you talk shop during the drinking?
Quite a bit.
We didn't have anything else to talk about.
We would talk about food, and it wasn't just drinks. We'd always try and make something for the chefs that are coming in because it'd be hosted at everybody's shop. So, we get together and eat and talk about stuff and cool products or what, we were doing. And then we started to get a little more serious a couple years and think about, like, can we buy in bulk and do things like this to kind of help the bottom lines of the restaurants?
Did you guys do that? Did it work?
Nope. Didn't work. We talked about it sometimes in restaurants. I think at that time, I was the only restaurant owner in the group. I fell into a situation where I was a restaurant owner pretty young. I was a partner originally, and then at this time I was like a partner. But there gets to be a lot of opinions and personalities with restaurant owners. So
That
sometimes
was a really polite way to say something. I watched you filter that.
That was pretty polite.
I wonder what he's thinking right now, guys.
Yes. If you would ask me that same question 10 years ago, you would have got a completely different answer. Some of those personalities could get in the way a little bit because people, rather than just say, okay, we're going to do this and this is how it is, you have to filter opinions. And one person wanted to store all the stuff and wanted the group to pay him. And, so there was just things that didn't
I don't remember that guy.
The fuck you don't.
All right, so Jay, I want to hear what happened in the walk-in after 2 a.m. then.
We seriously just talked about cheese. It was the craziest thing. Like, I remember going to Sentia.
Oh, man,
and we're
that
doing
was a crazy night. I remember that.
That was
we were all in
crazy.
the walk-in looking at Brent's shelf of cheese.
Yeah. And it's like we got out of the walk-in, and the sun's up. I'm going like,
Oh, no. Yeah.
like...
That was a crazy night.
That was a crazy night.
Yeah.
That might have not been the night that Fozzie Osbourne was invented.
No, that was not the night of the Fozzie Osbourne.
What is the Fozzie Osbourne? I think I remember that was one of our cocktails on the
It
menu.
was one of our cocktails.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really just a giant green hangover in a glass, but
Yeah.
it went down easy after a night in a 130-degree kitchen.
Oh, it was so good. But it'd get you so drunk.
Yeah. I don't even remember what was in it.
So to recap, this is a drinking club.
It was,
Right.
It was a
That
drinking
eventually became serious as
So
we
you
got.
did get serious.
We did
And
eventually get a little something going.
Well, I think the pinnacle point of like the serious structure came when who was it? Our commissioner cut out all the Parks and Recs bathrooms and all that. We're kind of
Yep.
like, screw this. Like, what the hell is this about? We can't be progressing with such a beautiful city and everything, and all of a sudden have this, ding dong being like, tripping over dollars to make up pennies.
Yeah.
Right.
So this was a response culturally to what was happening elsewhere in the city.
Yeah,
that sounds like a response not even to food and drink in bigger markets. This wasn't like looking at whatever, Chicago, Denver, LA, and saying, oh, we got to do this thing with our scene. You're like, no, our town around us is
town needs it.
declining.
Yeah.
And the other thing that motivated us, we did so many events in those days, all of the different things. There was the chef's gala and the chef's showcase and the this and the that and the other thing. And it was 6 times, 8 times a year we were at the Broadmoor or the Antlers or whatever, and we're giving food away. And we never had any plates or forks or spoons or anything to serve all these people. And then we look like assholes, restaurateurs, chefs in there, and we're like, I'm
Where's
sorry.
my fucking plate?
Right. I can't give you any food because I don't have a plate. So we wanted to put on our own event for chefs by chefs, and also to help support something that we all believed in at the time. And we still do believe in it, and it's Rockledge Ranch. And so Brent actually kind of spearheaded the thing with the original general manager of the ranch. Brent and I ended up over there talking about it for, I think, almost a year and a half before we actually pulled the first one off.
Yeah, it was quite a while. I mean, big things like that take time to plan. And
Are we talking about Fiddles, Vittles, and Vino? Okay.
Which was in response on what Jay was talking about. Rockledge was the one that's always on the chopping block first. It's one of the prettiest parks in the city.
it's because it would make beautiful $1 million homes.
Yeah, it would.
It's a working history ranch or working history museum. So it takes a lot to fund. Its funding is more than Thorndale Park or one of these little parks. It has staff, it has
Livestock.
groundskeepers, has
Right.
livestock.
Yeah.
So it was always really important for us to keep that. Like when we first met with Gene, who was the GM in the beginning, and he was like, I think I know you. And I'm like, oh, I
Yeah,
grew
you
up
probably
over there.
threw me out of the park.
And he was like,
You're that kid that smokes weed by the lake. Get out of here.
I didn't smoke weed that young, but he was like, I think I chased you off of there for throwing rocks at ducks when I was a little boy. And it was the thing we did in the neighborhood. We'd go down to Rockledge Ranch, and I was like, yeah, you did. But that's one of the reasons it's important to me, because you had a place in your neighborhood that you could go and be outside. There were frogs, ducks, all these things, lots of deer.
Apples, all
Yeah.
the stuff, yeah.
And those things are important. We lose those in a lot of
throw at the
cities.
duck.
Yeah. I mean, we've already lost Vinatucci Farm for that
Yep.
matter, and like the
Don't even get me
historical
started on
things.
Bentucci. That still just pisses me off.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they were done so wrong.
Yeah.
So wrong.
For someone who doesn't know, basically the watershed, the aquifer got tainted by chemicals. It's not tenable to grow and eat food off that farm now. So you can give away pumpkins if you want for decorating, or you can grow flowers or whatever. But
don't cook that pumpkin.
don't eat the pumpkin.
Don't eat the seeds, yeah.
Yeah. We'll continue the conversation in a minute. But first, State of Plate is made possible through the support of the Colorado Springs Community Cultural Collective, illuminating City Auditorium with diverse and accessible arts, education, and business events. and working on establishing Colorado's first media arts registered apprenticeship program in partnership with Pikes Peak Workforce Center and the Alliance for Media Arts and Culture. Learn more about this unique program at communityculturalcollective.org. Now, back to the conversation. Club 9 sounds like it takes on a historical preservation mission more than just elevating food and drink. That's maybe surprising to some of us. Like, wow, okay, what? You guys are doing historical preservation now. What? But is that a tie to, like, again, local food and local agriculture and local farms? Is that sort of like the overlap between the food and the farm? Or
I think so in a lot of ways. There is that overlap. And obviously in Colorado, the Western Slope is one of our premier, ag producing areas. But the Front Range had a lot of stuff. The late 1890s, early 1900s, there was a lot of cherries, apples, things like that growing here. And that area by Garden of the Gods is so beautiful, I think. It was our intent to raise money to help them survive. And that's what kind of galvanized us into drinking less and doing something. A lot less. But I think that also it's not just the farming and kind of historical aspect of production on the Front Range for like consumable items for your body, but it's community. This affects our communities. Without that place, Colorado Springs is way fucking lamer.
Like Brent said, it's a place in the neighborhood. That's a place you'd go. You'd walk around with your girlfriend in high school, or, you and the guys go wander around, and you can get kind of on some rocks and not be in Garden of the Gods a little bit on the west side of the park, and maybe not get run off by the Rangers quite so quick when you're scrambling and doing things when you're a knucklehead and you're young. So it was a special place. Really what our mission was to throw a party for us, by us, and bring a bunch of people. And in the meantime, we could connect to something that really made
sense,
that helped to make a difference. And then over the years, we planted some trees over there. There was, before a big freeze, there was a big blackberry patch that we'd planted. There is asparagus over there that we've planted. And I haven't had a phone call recently, but over the years, I've had hey, come harvest asparagus. We've got squash in the garden. Do you need berries?
Is Fiddles and Vittles still a thing, or is it
circle pattern?
Yeah, we're kind of on another year of hiatus. Unfortunately, we just couldn't quite put it together, and this goes way deep into some things we'll probably talk about in a little bit.
Pre-pandemic that it retired?
No, so we went up through, and then the year of 2020, we just decided it was a better idea not to lay out all the money for the bands, for the tents, for everything else, and not know if we could put 1,500 people in a space together.
Right.
Last year, we weren't quite there. There was a lot of staffing issues and whatnot. And this year, what actually came to it is I think I had restaurants ready to go. And the rental companies that we use to do the tents, tables, chairs, and all the other things couldn't get staff.
Labor alone killed this year's thing.
Right.
Wow. Back to labor again.
Right back to labor.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Is there still a Club 9?
Club 9 exists.
It
It's a
exists.
legal entity.
Who's now in Club 9 then?
There's, I think, 5 of us now that kind of make it up. And then
Have you thought about changing your club's name to Club 5?
No.
Okay.
Hopefully,
It's a legal entity, and that'd be
after
a big pain in the ass.
young
Matt. I don't know if you've ever filed for a nonprofit.
Do you think you guys could make 4 friends quickly?
Yes.
I don't even know if I have any friends.
We're all here.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I thought
Okay.
you were here for Schnipper.
No, we're here for you.
Okay, so Club 9 exists, even though it's 5 now. You are in a circle pattern on Fiddles and Vittles. We might see it come back next year. We'll see. what
Hoping
happens.
for next year. I will tell you there will be one more.
Yeah,
It might
cool.
only be one more,
Okay.
but there'll be one more.
We mentioned this in episode 1. We were talking about the rapid development downtown, these bigger buildings coming up, cranes in the skyline. As it pertains to your mission or your vision, the Club 9 ethos, how's that affecting our food scene?
We're kind of on like another chain explosion again, which, it happens. It's cyclical here. I remember hearing the stories of the 80s when we were used as a test market for chains because we had such a transient population with such a heavy military base and everything else. And then it's like we kind of grow as an independent restaurant scene, and then something happens. The big one was 2008, where the wheels fell off society again. And what happened? The Powers Corridor blew up, Briargate blew up, super chain driven, and we took a back seat again, and now we're getting that inertia up again, and now we got a pandemic to deal with and low labor, and now it's what used to be excellence or nothing is now, well, we have to settle for that because it's either that or nothing now. We can't even hit excellence on a lot of it, whether it's modification of hours or this or that, and we still just keep on growing, and with the ultra saturation of chain restaurants, it's definitely not helping our scene, and every time it just takes a little bit harder to get that growth and get that bubble up. of actually taking young culinarians and growing them to where they want to stick in this field. And it's just not just a monetary driven force of, well, I make great money flipping 9,000 burgers on a 3-hour wait, or, well, I can actually learn how to, do a brunoise or make a beautiful mirepoix or do, some other classic thing, or even, I got one of my chefs. She's like, I need to pick your brain about molecular gastronomy. I'm going, okay, well, get ready because you're going to want to get a notepad. Because I'll dump it on you, but you apply it or don't apply it, but you'll at least have the skill set.
And this is something that you have a personal skill set in, but that's not actually on your menus either. This is sort of extracurricular.
It is. It's totally extracurricular. I mean, when I started doing all that stuff, it was just for fun. It was just kind of like, I'm going to float chocolate.
And that's not going to fly on your menus right now, is it?
No, there's no way. The amount of labor that goes into facilitating a lot of that type of shock food, I guess you could call it, it was always meant to be good garnishes, not center of the plate. If you really want to see it succeed, you keep it as a healthy, cool, cognitive garnish or, an add-on.
I think a lot of places who can pull that off too, with the molecular stuff like El Bulli or French Laundry, any of those places in the past had free stages lining up, living in their cars to learn that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And it is a completely different market. I mean, we've never had Colorado Springs be a huge pull for culinary stages.
Right.
No. But I think, that's one of the things that pushes stuff like that is having that free or lower rent labor in a sense. And now there's just not any labor.
Yeah, there's none. And and staging is a total thing of the past.
Oh, yeah. You're not getting anybody to work for free for 2 days.
No.
Or 2 months.
Back in the day, that's how you came up. You would basically do this little free internship. It's how we got Hogan at Cincha, who's now at French Kitchen. Like, they come in out of PPCC or somewhere locally and say, hey, I want to learn. And you get this nice little trade. They get their feet wet. But classically, that's how you would go train with a chef and another chef and another chef and become a really good chef. In episode 1, we were just talking about that sort of we don't have that lineage thing going on.
They'd work for James for 2 years, and they worked for Brent for 2 years, and then they worked for me for 2 years, and they work, it was just one of those things where they just kept on developing and broadening their skill set just by learning very relatively the same techniques, because it is a lot of it's still foundational, but then our own personal twists on it.
It was one of the things I really appreciated listening to Shane talk is that we don't have that, and you don't see it. And this is, in a way, sitting at this table, it's kind of the end of that happening in Colorado Springs in a way. I mean, you with Christine Adrian and Kettle and the people that kind of founded and formed you young in Colorado Springs, Brent, and the concept restaurants and what came out of concept restaurants. There's a lot of great people. I didn't work in those places, but I did work for Kettle, and I did work for a guy named Alan Ackman, and then some of the old French guys in the very beginning, Gene Torville. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if any of you guys ever worked with Francis or any of those guys around town. They had a lot of stuff to pass along to you then. Jay's talking about a beautiful mirepoix. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but man, when you do it right and you know what that is, but we don't have that. Or on that same level, a lot of Brent's food is influenced by his travels, and he's traveled pretty significantly in the East. That is a big part of it. Shane touched on that too. Like, we've got these places that are popping up that have the ethnic drive behind them, and the person running it's never been to Thailand, never stepped foot in Tokyo, never been to Mexico City, and they're making tacos. And I'm like, so what's going on? The internet has changed that a lot. I mean, when we were all kids, I don't know, I still have hundreds, maybe thousands of cookbooks.
You had to read a book.
And you had to read 4 or 5 of them, and you had to know how to reference them, and you had to do it.
And cross-reference.
And today, absolutely. I mean, you throw up, curry, and you can pick out 77,000 recipes for curry on your phone in less than the blink of an eye.
Yeah, but how many of them are hack curries?
All of them.
They're all
that's the problem.
And that's the gig.
And nobody's been there, and with Mama Linda showing you how to make curry, right? And nobody's been there with the old French guy who hit you with a spoon when you didn't stir the hollandaise in a figure 8. Because it whips it and makes it fatter.
Yeah, I was smacked straight in the forehead for talking while learning a beurre blanc.
Right.
With a pair of tongs.
Yeah. We can't do that anymore, by the way.
We could go into some old stories here, but that would be incriminating.
Right. So all of that stuff, but a lot of it is gone, and a lot of it, people are allowed to elevate and get to a place that they shouldn't be when they are. I certainly did. I also worked so hard to make sure nobody knew I wasn't where I belonged when I was 23 and running a restaurant that I had no business running. And I don't see that drive either in a lot of these places. I was at a place that has a pretty good reputation in town here. Young guys running it. It's super nice. We had a nice meal. But at 7 o'clock, those guys walked out and left it with their crew, and their crew is, I tell you, the experience changed at that point. That crew's not ready for them to not be there. That to me is frustrating and disappointing, and now that crew's also not getting from
the culture they need.
The culture they need, and to learn.
Perseverance and just the dedication of you don't leave until it's done right.
Right.
If it's 20 years later since the formation of this club to now, do you feel like it's been largely mission accomplished, or we actually look around and don't know if we've made any impact?
I think there's been actually a lot of impact. How many chefs and culinarians have you guys grown? I know I've got a solid dozen under my belt, a great mentorship throughout it. And then we still have, I think, a community aspect. If you think of every time there's a fundraiser, who gets leaned on? The food, all the restaurants. Hey, we got this event coming up. We need food. We need booze. Can you help? Of course, we were always there to help. We still remain there always to help unless we physically cannot do it. And right now we've ran into a thing where, I mean, even my caterings, I'm cutting out caterings because I just don't have the bodies to do it.
Mm-hmm. I think we are a little farther along in a lot of ways. Not necessarily because of Club 9, but a lot of people have moved into the Springs that have a little bit more far-ranging culinary chops in a sense. When I had Sencha, and it was hard to get people to embrace what we were doing because we were doing stuff that was not commonplace for this town.
I mean, you heard Shane talk about the bison tongue incident at Nosh and being told, I won't eat this food. I'm not on Survivor, but do you recall any stories like that at Sencha where people really gave you pushback in a just ridiculous way?
No, I probably blocked that out with marijuana and booze. But we would get, pushback. It's funny, I remember one time you had a table of ladies that were just atrocious to you. I don't know if you remember this.
Apparently I've blocked that with marijuana and booze.
The POS system had gone down, and I threw them out of the restaurant, and everyone in Sencha clapped. I don't know if you don't remember that.
I don't remember that at all.
You were like, Chef, these ladies are making me nuts. Computers down. I mean, we had the cheapest computer ever.
The birth of the Karen.
Oh, they were full-fledged Karens.
Karen Ground Zero.
Yep.
What about you, James? Any take on then and now mission accomplished?
I think through that early part of the 2000s and into 2008, a lot of these restaurants that I call it that original renaissance in Colorado Springs of getting away from that 80s and 90s drive of chain restaurants and all of the stuff. And I mean, I'm pretty sure
London
there was
Royal.
a book written about us, right?
It was
Fast Food Nation. And it pissed a lot of us off, and and that was another thing, we wanted to get together and be a part of
you were
something.
pissed that Eric Schlosser used our market as his demographic study, driving down to Pueblo and seeing all the signs.
And not so much at him, but just at the fact that that's where we lived, and and it kind of brings to your head okay, well that's why we struggle with anything, because really what's going on here is this is the $14.95 sirloin and baked potato town, and how are we going to beat that? And we had a great little time there till about 2008. I left town at that point. Sencha went away.
Sencha is now an Arby's. Let's just be clear.
Right.
Sencha's now an Arby's.
Well, it was an Arby's. Then it was a Sencha. Then it was
Jack
an
in the
Arby's.
Box.
It was a Jack in
It
the
was
Box.
Jack in the Box.
And then it was Sencha.
Right.
But if you want to look
Yeah.
at Colorado Springs food scene sometimes and look for a symbol, you're like, well, Sencha, one of the greatest restaurants of its time, is now an Arby's.
Right. Yeah. That's a tough thing. Primitivo went away. La Petite Maison went away. Walter's, as it was, kind of went away.
Which leaves us with the city on the hill, as we said in last episode. We have the Broadmoor.
Right. Yeah,
Fantastic,
the Broadmoor,
but kind of traditional stodgy.
the Warehouse kept going, but it had some issues for a little while there. The Margarita was still up north, but it doesn't really. The Margarita fits everything that you want in a downtown restaurant. It just happens to exist somehow in a part of town that hates that kind of restaurant.
Which is really amazing, actually. And to their credit, they have the farmers market there on the weekends. They really engage local food. Eric, Kathy, those guys are just phenomenal chefs, do a really good job. And
Yeah, they're amazing.
yeah, but you're right. They're out of their place in a way.
Right. It's kind of the last of the enclave of the West Side North.
A quick topic shift. In the last episode, you heard Shane and Jared were saying that isn't it interesting that our scene seems to have popped with cocktail, coffee, beer, distilling culture before food. Well, drink came before food, and we were saying that's usually out of order. It's usually a food scene begets a drink scene. Do you guys have any commentary on that from your perspective?
I think we were way before the cocktail culture.
Well, yeah, but I think they're talking more in the current state.
In the current.
As cocktails kind of made a place for themselves in the rebirth of the pre-prohibition cocktail styles and really getting after the craft part of distilling and making drinks. I kind of agree with them on that in a way, but the food was here. It just went away. And then it came back maybe stronger. I think a lot of it is that it is so much less expensive to produce booze, to produce coffee than it is to open a restaurant. And so there are a lot of very wise conservative investors in this area who are not going to just throw $300,000 or $800,000 at me because I want to have this new grand place in the hotel downtown. But they'll shoot you, 50 grand to buy a still. It's not a big deal. And they can see, that XYZ is going to produce 50 grand in 2 years. XYZ is not going to produce $800,000 in a decade to pay back on the restaurant. And those food places existed in other places for a long time before the culture of distilleries and drinks and beer.
I think one thing that's changes the cocktail and coffee scene is that most of the food that is creative here in the Springs, or at least that has deep roots, is pre-Instagram culture. And at least in my opinion, the cocktail thing blew up through Instagram. And I think Instagram and Facebook and just social media in general is a tool that in 2000 we didn't have.
I remember it was like, hey guys, we're in a meeting at the Ritz and we're going like, the days of opening your front door and getting slammed are gone. We're going to have to change our marketing strategy. We're going to have to start actually fighting at it because it was like, it used to be your new restaurant. The community was there to support you. It took you to ruin that reputation.
And now you could open and no one would know you're there. You're not going to get any traffic. Yet, as we said in episode 1, you'll get a 14-hour line around the block for In-N-Out.
Yep.
Yeah, well, everybody knows they're coming. And they've been building it, and they've had signs around it forever. And everybody wants to try it. If you haven't had it, you want to get it. And if you're from wherever, Texas, Whataburger, California, In-N-Out, and you've relocated to Colorado Springs, you're like, sweet, it's finally going to be here. I haven't had one of those in 3.5 years. They are marketing specifically to that group of people that has been here, and there's thousands of them that are wanting that piece of home. And that's why it works so well here.
We'll continue the conversation in a minute. But first, I'd like to thank these underwriters for making this podcast possible. Downtown Colorado Springs, home of the largest concentration of independent restaurants in southern Colorado, is proud to sponsor State of Plate and support the passionate individuals who make the food and beverage industry a cultural highlight in our lives. And the Fountain Creek Brewshed Alliance. Good beer requires good water, and lots of it. That's why the Fountain Creek Brewshed Alliance brings together water resource experts and brewing industry professionals to spark conversations about protecting our watershed. Visit fountain-crk.org to find a liquid lecture at your favorite local brewery. Now, back to the conversation. Jay, in the last episode, I told the story of the Roswell, which gets back to what you said earlier about the short-lived venture with bringing in
Schmolprot,
Nordic food.
Scandinavian cuisine. It's beautiful. It's very healthy. It was very uber local driven. I mean, right down to like snipping blue spruce tips off my neighbor's tree to cure Gravlock salmon. But it just wasn't.
Why didn't it work?
I think I was a little cocky.
No way. Not you.
You're shouldering the blame for this alone out of being cocky?
Because it is so far outside the box, but I could see the progression of the city happening. I'm going like, now's the time to strike. We need to get a good anchor up there of an independent restaurant that is thought forward on cuisine and actually bring another layer of texture of cool to the north side. And that was really the idea. Now where I failed is that that should have been half the size. I should have spent the money on putting a hood in so I could actually do some type of dinner options. But I thought like this whole almost like a Tapateria meets Scandinavia up there next to a brewery and Schmolprats with, all the beautiful locally made product. They're meant to be together. That's like the jam on beer and schmolbrot are two peas in a pod.
I thought it should have worked again, like what was going into the Lincoln Center around you. Great bread, great beer, great coffee. Why didn't this work? And I was trying to blame the eater partly. Like, we didn't support it, but is that too much blame to put on them? You're shouldering it. You're saying it was a bit of your model.
I think a bit of the model, like I said, if I would have had half that space, which would also kind of ruined a lot of the ambiance of it, because it did look like, it looked like you're straight up in Denmark. We needed to have, 150 regulars instead of 50 regulars that are coming in twice a week.
Okay.
And a lot of people that are from Scandinavia and from those countries, when they see the price of what a schmolbrot costs to make in current times with local artisan bread makers and flying in Lurpak butter and all that, if I want to not turn a profit and lose my butt that way, then it's going to be in the price point that they were looking at.
Mm-hmm. So it's hard to get people to equate the value of an open-faced sandwich, even though they're highly popular in Copenhagen and in places in Europe. This is what everyone eats for lunch. We can't pull that off here because of the
cost of ingredients.
And then
cost of ingredients, cost of labor, cost of rent,
cost of everything. Middle of the
utilities. All of those things make it so much harder here. And I look at some people, I don't understand sometimes when I look at restaurants. I'm like, how do you do it?
Give me an example.
How do you do a $3 taco? How many $3 tacos do you have to sell to pay an $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 rent? Even schmolbrot, I was like, how are you going to do this? $15 sandwiches. There's a lot that goes into that, and you got to sell a lot of them.
You have to have the right margins where it's like, I could still keep it at $15, but what I needed to cut my rent in half.
Right. But with what you had and what you were doing, there was no way to do that. And that's, it was one of the things I thought about when I sat down in there is this is not going to attract the diners like, the new In-N-Out or even a Green Line or whatever. There's going to be a lot of expenses, and it's labor-intense food.
It is, yeah.
Slicing all of the meat, curing the fish, doing the beets,
hand slicing the bread.
Right. Even just buttering whatever, 300 pieces of bread every day, so that you can make the sandwich on top of it. That's a lot of work.
Well, this kind of leads into like what Luxie and I were talking about the other day, where it's just like, Jay, back in the 70s and 80s, man, I could give the house away and still have a 20% return. Mm-hmm. And now it's like we're fighting for 10. Yeah. And now it's like, even now, I don't know if your insurance costs went up like mine did, but let me tell you, unemployment, workers' comp, all that good stuff. Well, thank you 2020, because that was a hell of a pill to swallow.
Workers' comp and unemployment insurance is just insane too.
Because they're not basing it off of the employees you have; they're basing it off the money spent.
Yeah,
and that's one of the big things. So you keep
the money that we spent the last 2 years to keep everybody sitting at home not working for us.
Yeah,
it's the damn.
We're talking about something that's just all behind the scenes. This is what actually is, when it comes to like looking at our food scene and making, whether
keeps us up at night.
Whether we're complaining about, I wish it was this or wish it was that, but like the average person has no idea behind the scenes all the shit you guys are going through just to keep the lights on, keep open, tight margins, labor, everything the pandemic brought. You guys are up against so much stuff. What would you want to cook right now that you can't cook right now in this town?
We've managed to put some things on the menu over the last 18 months since we've reopened that I can tell you 20 years ago would have sat and rotted in the bottom of my refrigerators. And you've had a couple of those, Matt, the ceviche, which is
the scallop ceviche right now on the happy hour menu.
Which is a super common thing now, but it's being presented very differently. This isn't like fish salsa that we're serving.
Right.
You're doing like crudo style,
right?
Nice.
Yeah, and so it's super beautiful with blood oranges and lime and cilantro and jalapeno, and it's like a crudo style scallop that's just lightly brined. But even the salsa style ceviche 20 years ago, unless you were at the restaurant for that, the three of them in town that were making ceviche, you weren't coming to my place to eat ceviche. And then that tongue, Shane talked about it 15 years ago. He put tongue on the menu at Nosh, and he got an earful from everybody about, I'm not on Survivor. But man, it's delicious, and we sell a ton of it.
So people are eating tongue now.
People are eating these things. And some of it is curiosity, and some of it is actually people just have had enough experience now.
There's a lot more exposure to what were traditionally like low-end ethnic foods. I used to be able to buy tongue for $2 a pound, and now it costs me $7. And that's famous chefs' faults.
My old Ritz menus, I remember like I had duck ton on there. I used to beef cheeks, skate wings, all that. It was never frowned upon. For me, my big like cruxes were like, man, if I took tater tots off the menu, holy moly!
Yeah.
Or like it was like the running joke. It's like, well, I hope they never change Splendid to like a green label because I'd be out in the street getting flogged.
Yeah.
So Brent, it sounds like you would like to bring back the Chipotle chicken, is what I'm hearing.
Oh, that fucking dish! I remember when I made that dish. I was so excited.
Scallops and crepes.
I was so excited about it, and then
It's all we sold. It's all we could sell, and you would get so mad.
it took so long to cook. Eventually, we changed it on the menu to 30-minute chicken. It says it, and people be like, "I need to be at the symphony in 15 minutes." And can you? And it's like, no, that says it's 30
right
minutes.
there.
Describe the dish real quick. What do you do for a Chipotle chicken? Or a 30-minute chicken?
For the Chipotle chicken, we would just open up a chicken breast, and we took like cream cheese and grano padano and just whipped it till it became like one cohesive mass. We'd put a little nutmeg in it, julienne jalapenos, and then we would do like potato straws inside of it, like blanched potato straws, and they would kind of puff out the ends like a ribbon. And we would roll that thing and pan fry it and bake it in the oven and serve it with a Chipotle cream sauce. It was a super simple dish. People went fucking nuts for it. I mean, it's a good dish, but I don't understand.
Yeah, you'd give us like 3 awesome specials for the night to go sell. I would go to the table. I would work my heart out trying to sell the special. And every time, like, oh, that sounds great, but we're going to have the Chipotle chicken. I'd fire 2 of them, go back to the kitchen, and then you'd be screaming, God damn it, quit selling Chipotle chicken. Give me a special. Like, what am I supposed to do, chef? You created the dish. It's your fucking fault.
It was, yeah. We still have people come into the Carter Payne and say, hey, do you remember that? And I'm like, I do remember that.
Cooked
They're like,
38,000
you
of
think
them.
you want to bring that back? I'm like,
No.
never again.
I'll give you one thing from the Cincha era, and it's the smoked tea vinaigrette dressing.
Yeah, and the chocolate strata.
And the chocolate strata. The smoked tea vinaigrettes.
That's right, Lao Tsing Shushong.
Yeah.
Epic.
I think that was part of the cheese night. We talked about tea for probably about 3 hours too.
Yeah.
So Jay, aside from Nordic, unless the answer would still be Nordic, what would you want to cook right now that you can't?
I would say the one concept that I still have all these like little LLCs and trademarks floating out there because I had this idea by now. I thought I was gonna have like 8 or 9 restaurants. Nope. But Gustacion, like I still want to bring. I would love to bring something that can operate at like a 1 Michelin star to town.
That'd be amazing.
That'd be my pinnacle. Like, okay, hats on the wall. I'm gonna go just focus on this and retire out.
And what would be on a menu like that in the Springs? I'm trying to picture, how do we get a star here?
How do we get a star? Well, we're not gonna. First off,
The menus are really, it's not that much different from a lot of the food that we're preparing now.
It's the service.
It's the service and also the presentation of those things, the time that goes behind. You know, we're taking one guy 30 minutes to cut the brunoise garnish for our ceviche on a daily basis, right? Correctly. Doing this at a Michelin level, that goes to an hour because there can't be the one little whisker in there.
There's no
doesn't
chopping out.
work.
It's
Right. It is, and they are cubes, and that's how it works, and there's no other way about it. And you slow down. It's actually a cube off of a round vegetable.
So you're saying you could hit flavors, but if you don't hit presentation, it's out the window.
It's the full meal deal, and then it's also like when I look at Colorado, I see 13 seasons because I mean there's that little taint season where ramps are available, and it's about 3 weeks.
Garlic scapes, same thing.
There is enough vegetables grown, enough product to harvest, and enough local food around here to actually bring a touch of Europe to Colorado Springs.
Absolutely.
The execution of that goes to, as one of my mentors would say, how do you make a small fortune restaurant start with a large fortune? It probably would do that. And it probably would be one of those things where I'd have to keep all the other restaurants going just to break even on this one. But I would wholeheartedly do that if we could actually bring that level to this.
And now we're talking about how would you staff it?
Right. Well, and beyond that staff, though, I mean, talking about Alinea, there's the coat check to make sure that when you get there, the coat check is already out and in hand. And that's the stuff that has to happen. We have nothing like that, even at the Castle on the Hill.
Why can't we have it here? Why are we destined to this place we seem to be?
The money's not here. The right kind of money isn't here. There's actually a lot of money here in this town. That
There's
tons
tons of money, but there's
but it's
some money likes McDonald's. Some money likes
Chick-fil-A.
local local farms.
Are we talking about the money on the consumer side or the developer investor side?
The investor developer side.
Yeah.
Both.
The investor developer side has it, but what we don't have is kind of the fun, flamboyant money like you have in Dallas and Chicago and Los Angeles and San Francisco, where I just want to be behind something. And that money, I mean, Alinea, the French Laundry, Dean Faring's place in Dallas, those places don't exist here because we don't have the consumer money, but we also don't have the money that wants that here. You know, that's the investor side. I had one of the greatest experiences of my life at Faring's at the Four Seasons in Dallas. It was amazing, and the whole thing, from the time that we got out of the car until we went back to the car, it's this experience, and it is completely put together for you and for you alone. There were 300 people in that restaurant, and I had no idea on some level that there were 300 people in that restaurant.
One thing I think with especially with Michelin stuff, is there seems to be a little bit of a change. You're starting to get some one-star Michelin restaurants that are not super service oriented. They're
The food trucks.
Trucks.
That's one thing that it just infuriates me. I'm going like, you're talking about, so you look at some of the greats, like, the Bocuse and the Ferdinand Pont and, Frégé and all those guys, where it's like they spent every penny they had to ensure they had the right silverware, the right this, the right everything. And now we're kind of like,
It's really good food, but it's in paper, and that's fine.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
No, and it's just goofy, and the lessons in excellence, like even Trotter's books, lessons in excellence and lessons in service. You read through that should almost be like mandatory. It should be in schools. We may not have home ec anymore, but here's lessons in service and lessons in excellence. I quote that stuff all the time with the staff, where it's like sometimes you got to fire your clientele. If they're going to be four Karens, get them out.
Do you feel like the food truck culture is undermining our moving forward then? Like it's sort of undercut brick and mortar or bringing it down to paper plate level?
I think the food truck culture is fine. I just say that I don't think it's wise for Michelin to go in there and start going, hey, this is a really good ramen bowl. 1 Michelin star. It's like, okay, well, I guess I'll go get some sporks out and we'll see if we can rally one in the brick and mortar.
I think, one thing with Colorado Springs in particular is that, and this is probably a Colorado thing too, I think that we have always been underrepresented in 4-star, 3-star entities. And I think some of that is it's still a little bit of we're the Wild fucking West. It's very casual here. Even at the Castle on the Hill, it's pretty casual compared to the Waldorf Astoria. I mean, I've worked in kitchens where you better be in whites and you better look nice. And
here's your shaver. Go shave.
And now, and I'm part of this kind of cultural change in the back of the house, I guess. I mean, I'm in shorts every night. And that doesn't help that perception.
We're talking right now up at this higher end fine dining level. That's not always fair when we get back to the international places and places you can just get a good bun or Korean bulgogi or whatever it is. Do you guys have a sense of the rest of the food scene in the Springs? Are you satisfied at that middle level? Can we pat ourselves on the back for
being good enough? No.
No, we're not good enough.
I say this a lot, and it's going to make a lot of people mad, but the Colorado Springs food scene has it's good enough for us culture. It's not good enough. And we need to be better than a lot of what's out there right now, and a lot of the stuff that gets a lot of praise and a lot of hands in the air and a lot of, oh my God, it's the best taco I've ever had, or it's the best burger I've ever had, or have you had this barbecue? You need to go before you start talking about barbecue, I want you to go to Austin, and I want you to go to Kansas City and eat barbecue. Go to St. Louis and have barbecue. Go to the Carolinas, and then talk to me about the 6 barbecue shops here in town and tell me which one is better than good enough. That's the thing, and that goes for so much of the food. It's just good enough. It's just done at a level where it's passable. I'm going to throw Greg Howard into this mess here because I will tell you the best fish and chips that existed in this city are gone. Because McCabe's is gone. They were good. They were huge. They were juicy. They were
good.
It was so good. And I had fish and chips at a place last night that is pretty highly touted. It's on the other side of town. And I will tell you, it's one of the best fish and chips I've had. I was really impressed because I went in kind of under the assumption that it wasn't going to be good because everything that I hear is so good.
Well, this is a compliment. Why don't we just name names on this one? Where were you? Abby's.
And Abby's
okay.
did a great
Irish
job
pub.
with fish and chips. I will tell you, far exceeded my expectations.
Do you guys have an opinion on any places that you think are better than
Better than
good enough?
It's hard, right? Like,
Well, it's
because you
it's-
can go to Denver and get a taco or a noodle bowl or a Buddha bowl or barbecue or fried chicken, and any of those things are going to be very good because you don't make it in Denver if you're not at least very good, let alone excellent or beyond. Those places don't fly, and it's way more expensive to be there doing that than it is here even. Maybe not way more anymore. We're starting to catch up with lease rates and whatnot. But
middle of the statement. There you go. Going to make tougher to bring to the bottom line.
yeah, I just think that's the difference. We can go somewhere and we can sit down and eat some things and we'll be perfectly happy with them. But you're not going to say, "Whoa." Mm-hmm. I'm going to go back and I'm going to seek that out again. Almost every time I go out, I'm disappointed. And sadly, these guys sitting here and most of my friends, we're not open when the rest of it, we're all closed on the same days. So we can't eat at each other's places, which is kind of a bummer. When we talk about those places, there's just not very many that I feel like can go. There are great places though, like Monsi's.
Oh yeah, I love
Yeah.
places.
But it's honest and it's real, and that's the food that she ate and loved and still eats and still loves and makes for all of us and teaches everybody the passion and the love behind it. It's not perfect food, but it's exactly what it's supposed to be.
Yep. It's awesome.
That's why it's amazing. There's a half a dozen of those places in town.
Right, like Danguillo. They're very straight up
yeah.
Puerto Rican food down by my house.
Right.
Half my family is Puerto Rican, and it's really good food. It is what it is supposed to be. I think there's a lot of shops like that in town, really. Like European Cafe, man, in my old stomping grounds. It used to be La
right.
Petite.
Yeah.
Like, I go there for lunch quite a bit.
Really?
Adam's Mountain Cafe, that's a long-time standard of, again, supporting
Fantastic.
local.
I almost always have only eaten there for breakfast. The food has always been excellent.
Yeah, dinner's the same, lunch is the same, and that to me has been one that's just been really consistent, standard. It hasn't changed what worked. You can still get those classic dishes that everyone goes there for.
I think in some ways, like, fine dining is really almost a thing of the past. And except in, like, your super urban, dense areas, which are mostly on the coast, you don't have any
Nobody
places that
wants
do,
all the
like,
pretense.
traditional, French service. Like, hey, I can debone a fish at the table. No one knows how to do that. I mean, that's one of those things, like when they talked about in the last episode, there's no one teaching these things, and it's not just in the back of the house.
Right.
It's
in
all
the
around.
front.
And a lot of foundational things are not being taught in front of the house as well.
And the way that we're talking about it, like these bastions of great food, they're pretty well gone. And the bastions of great service, they don't exist much anymore. They're still there, and there's places you can get it. But a lot of those places too are so far out of the range of the average diner to go. Hitting the French Laundry, that's not something most of the world is doing on a daily basis, or even California.
It's a special occasion.
It's a special
It's an
occasion, and it
anniversary place.
truly is a special occasion.
Right.
Alinea, the same thing. And they get away with it in those markets because the markets are so big, and there's enough people on a given day that it's 200 people's birthday every day in Chicago that can afford to eat at Alinea.
Yeah.
It's 200 people's
Exactly.
birthday every day that can afford to eat at Per Se.
And Alinea is really good. They did a fabulous job, and it was very interactive, which is also like when you're talking about the square foot of the kitchen, where it's like they bring you back in the kitchen to serve you one of the courses. I mean, it's something that we
cool.
could never pull off here because, I know my rules are like, the seats pay your rent, not the size of the kitchen. That's why if you look at all my kitchens, it's like, you do what out of here?
Yeah. You have one restaurant that doesn't have a kitchen, Jay. It's just kind of a bar with a burner behind it and a fan.
Yeah. Well, it does good.
So closing words, guys, anything we didn't cover that you wanted to touch on?
The only other thing that I wanted to hit on from episode 1, it's one of my favorite things, and it's something that I tell cooks a lot when we start getting, weedy and it's ugly and people are starting to freak out. And I will tell the guys, I'm like, everything we're doing right now is shit tomorrow, guys. Just keep that in mind. Super important, and this is my life, and this is my life savings is invested in this. But everything that we're doing right now is literally shit tomorrow. That's what we do, and we need to provide the entertainment around it to bring the value to it, but also kind of keep level heads about who we are and what we do and what it is. Has driven the culture to become less formal. The black pants and the white shirt and the 13-inch tall hat really changed what you're putting on the plate.
Actually, it does.
In a
on
way,
some level.
It does. But is that just is it really just perception?
I think it
Push
slows you
you
down to where you just don't mail it in.
Right.
I think if you want to look the part of being prim and proper, act the job you want, not the job you have. And if you are clean shaven and you are bringing attention to detail and you do work clean and you don't want to have to re-iron your chef coat, you don't want to spill tomato sauce on it, you're going to be methodical about not using your towels improperly, not using...
How you do anything is how you do everything. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Would that be some of your advice to the younglings?
Yeah, and at this point, a lot of it they're going to have to do themselves. There's not enough of us in town. There are enough of us around, but also like, don't chase the money. The money will come. Brent never did anything for money. You did it for pride, for yourself, and for what it meant to you. I never did anything for money. I did it for pride and to raise my family. The reason I left town was because I needed a place where I wasn't working 90 hours a week all the time while I had young kids. And I found something that allowed me to do that and still be in a kitchen and do what I wanted to do. And I still worked a lot, but it was never about money. There is a part of it now as an owner where money matters. Obviously, we have to have it and make sure that we can survive COVID as a restaurant.
You're one of the few old guys who's actually on your line every Friday night still too, right? Jay, you're not cooking as much. You're more of a restaurateur now, would you say?
Where I thought I was going to be now and where I am, two totally different realms. But it is no, do I work the line? Only when they're going down.
Yeah. Brent, are you still cooking a lot?
I'm back in the kitchen every day, every night. More as a like, oh shit, I need hands right here.
Yeah, you're more like expo roll than like lead saute now. You are.
And that transition's only been like in the last 8 months, 10 months. I've got an excellent sous chef named Marcus. He's one of the type of people I think, there's not the same type of hunger for food and knowledge that there was when we were coming up. Like I was just insatiable. Like teach me, show me.
Right.
You get a lot of people who are
watch, read, watch, show me.
Yeah, a lot of people now I think are
Google,
you know, and with my sous chef Marcus, he comes in every day and he's like, "Yo, chef, let's talk about this. This is what I think." And I say, "Okay, cool, let's work on these things." But I'm in the kitchen every day. I taste everything still.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes like, whoa, that's all jacked up.
Yeah.
Let's do that again.
You mentioned too, like you left for a family reason too.
Right.
What has the impact of chef's life been on you guys, on your family lives? You've given up a lot to be here still to do what you're doing. Jay, you've got the little kiddo now. Are you managing work-life balance?
Oh, totally. So when I was at the Ritz, absolutely not. I was called myself basically a culinary monk. I was married, but I devoted my life to food and wine and coffee and tea and whatever else, cigars back then. Like
Right. Yeah, they were a
that
thing. It was a part of the dining experience.
the smoker dinner. We did a cigar and port dinner.
I remember
in
that.
1996.
Pre-smoking ban in restaurants.
Pre-smoking
Yeah.
ban.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So back then you didn't have it. Now you do.
No, I totally.
Now you're mature enough and old enough to know how to do it.
Like the 15-year-old me say, there's no chance in hell we're going to cut out lunches and shut down for a day. Now it's like, you know what? We all need a break. We all need this. We still do our camping trips with the staff and just basically pivoted where it's definitely could I be chasing the dollar? Absolutely. And make some great revenues on those days. Territory days, we shut down. We go, you know what? It's not our clientele. You guys are already burnt out. Let's go camping. And we just do it as our own oversized family.
I think building staff culture is really important. I think especially nowadays, you had a lot of good cooks decide they can make more money, like smoking weed and driving for Grubhub during the pandemic when they had to. You know, I think the work-life balance thing is still like pretty hard for me. I mean, my son's grown. My son's 26, but I had Sencha when he was little. He spent a lot of time sitting on the counter in there. I was much more of an absent father than, you kind of in retrospect, it's like, man, I wish I would have some more time with him when he was little. And those are things like, you can't go back and change it, but I'm aware of, hey, I didn't spend as much time with my son, so now I spend a lot of time with my grandkids.
My kids are like Brent's pretty well grown. 18-year-old is still at home. 24 4-year, has been out of the house since she left for college. But that time that I got with them was invaluable, and I couldn't replace it. And I could see that I was not going to have that time doing what I did in a city. There was a lot of influence in that. My dad had just died. I was just thinking, man, time is so short. My dad was super young when he passed, and I was just like, I've got to do something different, and this is not gonna, this isn't gonna cut it for me to be a dad. There were a lot of really long days at points, but yeah, work-life balance. And I think better now, and again, Jay said it a few minutes ago, closing a couple of days a week. Never thought that would be a thing. Not doing lunch, never thought that would be a thing. I mean, we're open 30 hours a week right now. It's crazy. Pre-pandemic, it was 76 hours a week. Wow. And everything is working just fine. So thank you to Colorado Springs for that, too, because the support post-pandemic has been incredible.
Yeah, it's been huge.
I think
it created density is what it did. I mean, it's actually, it's less lucrative, but it's more lucrative.
Right. Most of us have recovered, I think, pretty well not necessarily mentally. I mean, I was exhausted coming out of that, trying to stay open and dealing with all the things. It was financial, it was physical, it was mental, it was
nuts.
It was, that year was
building a hotel during that.
Right. Was insane.
And try to get the defibrillator on 2 restaurants.
Right.
Holy moly. Because, I came back lethargic. I came back going do I remember how to turn an oven on?
Right. And do I want to turn the oven on? Why am I doing this? And there was a lot of that for the first 6-8 months. I mean, we did it. And we got through it as the warehouse, and I know you guys did too, as a collective but I will tell you, it was not the best stuff that I was putting in, because I had so many other things going on, and trying to breathe that life back into people, into the staff too. Okay, we're going to do this now, and we're going to go get it, and it's going to be busy, and people are going to come after us, and they haven't been out of their house for a year,
Well, events in general. I mean, look, there's so many events that got canceled this year, but we have all the clientele wants it. Everybody's hungry to party, but no one has the energy to host it.
Do we have, aside from the eventual hopeful Fiddles and Vittles return in a future year, anything coming up you guys want to mention before we check out here?
What I told my staff at the restaurants on the west side is don't just do a wine dinner or a beer dinner, cocktail dinner for the sake of doing a dinner. Make sure it's something really, really special. Is there a winemaker visiting? Is there this or that? So I know we're gonna hit those pretty heavy this season, but with a little bit more intention.
We're focusing right now on nursing our wine program along. Crusade Wine Bar was a pandemic baby. We figured you can't let a good pandemic go to waste. There's Jeff and I were there pretty much every day still. Yeah. We built the wine bar out, and we have an incredible wine list. So we're doing some winemaker dinners as well. And we've been doing paired dinners. We've done beer versus cocktail versus wine.
Yeah, that beer versus cocktail I heard about for 3 days, 4 days afterwards in different places. People really enjoyed that.
Yeah, so the next one we're doing, everyone wants to do 4 courses. You'll get a little beer, a little wine, a little cocktail, and then it'll be me versus Marcus.
Well, thank you again to all my guests this week.
And thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Brent Beavers, James Africano. This is State of Plate. We'll be back in our next episode and talk to more chefs and culinarians in town. On the next episode,
I shouldn't have to work the hours of a doctor and still wonder what I'm going to eat tonight. I shouldn't not be able to make my rent. If that culture is going to die, let it die.
The old abusive Gordon Ramsay and Marco Pierre White Kitchen is, it's archaic.
I think Colorado Springs is looking for fun. I think they're looking for more vibey, more trendy. It's kind of like getting with the times.
Thanks to State of Plate's underwriters, the Colorado Springs Community Cultural Collective, Downtown Colorado Springs, and the Fountain Creek Brew Shed Alliance. Please tell your friends about this podcast. We'd love your feedback, especially if you have a different perspective on anything we've said. You can comment on my social media pages, as well as the CS Indies. Find links in our show notes, or search us by name. State of Plate was written and co-produced by me, Matthew Schnipper, in partnership with the Colorado Springs Indie and Dave Gardner, who also did our editing. Art design by Elena Trapp. Digital support by Sean Cassidy. Cheers to Hug Speaks Lauren Hug, as well as Shane Lyons for consulting on the show. And special thanks to publisher and executive editor of the Colorado Springs Indie, Amy Gillentine, for greenlighting this podcast.